Honey, I Broke the House is the 20th episode of the third season of Full House. This is directed by Bill Foster, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about this episode. I think this is absolutely one of the most memorable episodes, and just for information, this is the third top rated on IMDb, and it does not surprise me. So as always, as I said, there will be spoilers, and I'm pretty much going to go through things chronologically this time, and it starts off rather adorably with Joey and Michelle outside playing baseball, a nice light-hearted way to start things off. Then we have Stephanie trying to get somebody to listen to her as she wants to tell them a story, and nobody really has the time to listen to her just now. So she goes outside to Joey, who is currently polishing his new 1963 Rambler, this rather beautiful red car. Although the red was an interesting choice because I don't know much about cars, and when I first saw it, it looks a lot like Danny's car. It doesn't when you compare them side by side, but to somebody like me who knows squat about vehicles, I think having another red car with Danny's being red was maybe not the best decision, but nevertheless, it's a nice looking car. He's called it Rosie. He's clearly very fond of this car, and even though it's a second-hand car, he's very proud of it. Comet wants to go for a walk, and Joey needs to go and get some touch-up paint to fix a scratch on the car or cover up a scratch. So he goes off with Comet, and Stephanie takes the opportunity to climb into the car. To her credit, she does her seatbelt, and she begins to pretend driving the car, and she wants to put the radio on. And I don't know if this is obvious. I don't know if I picked up on this the first time I saw this episode, but once you know it's going to happen, the keys in the ignition are very clearly visible. And she turns the keys, obviously not really understanding what they do, and she thinks the R, that actually means reverse, is R for radio. And she puts the car into R, and the car ends up reversing into the back of the house. I don't know what the house is made of, but I feel like if that happened to a house in the UK, the car would not go through the walls, not at that speed. I don't think it was going very fast at all, but nevertheless, the car goes through the kitchen. And I think Stephanie's reaction was very genuine. I think she seemed like she was in a state of shock. She didn't start screaming or anything, she just kind of was very wide-eyed and clambered out of the car and was just basically in disbelief. And I think Jodie Sweetin's performance was brilliant. It then takes a little bit of time for people to notice. And I have to say, I'd like to think, again, if a car came through my house, I'd be aware of it. But nevertheless, DJ and Kimmy are oblivious to this. And eventually they go into the kitchen and their reaction is fabulous. And then Danny comes in and DJ takes a picture of him to get his reaction, which I feel like was a golden opportunity. And his eyes are amazing. If you watch Bob Saget's eyes as he reacts to this, it's pretty fantastic. Really strong performance there. His eyes just have about 10 different emotions over the space of about 1 second, and it's very, very well done. Stephanie is not owning up to this. Danny currently doesn't know what happened. I think he thinks that Joey did it because Joey's not there. Joey, as we know, has gone to get the paint and take Comet for a walk. So I think Danny believes that Joey did it and scarpered. And Stephanie has decided to run away. So she goes to Becky's house. And I don't know how far away Becky lives, but she must live pretty close for Stephanie to have walked there. And of course, we get to see inside Becky's house, which is kind of cool. And the next thing we know, Jesse has come over because Becky is supposed to be meeting with somebody called Bo McIntyre. And Jesse is jealous of this. Becky's just meeting him for work, but Jesse is jealous and comes over very randomly. I feel like Jesse going over to Becky's did feel a little bit forced. I don't feel like that part of the narrative flowed as naturally as it could have done, but it does lead him to discovering Stephanie hanging up in the back of the cupboard, which was very, very well done. And then we go back to the house, and DJ says the brilliant line that I absolutely love. Hey, Dad, it's almost dinner. Do you want me to set the car? To his credit, Danny was taking it as well as he could have done. He kind of delivered a joke back and is trying, I think he's trying to not lose his cool. And then Joey comes in and Danny does kind of start to lose his cool. And Joey's reaction when he saw the car, I think, was enough to tell Danny that this is not something Joey did. And honestly, my thinking then would be that Joey had accidentally. I don't know much about American cars. I know they work slightly differently to British cars, but at least nowadays. But I feel like my reaction then, if Joey didn't do it when he was in the vehicle, would be that he'd left the handbrake off. But they're not on a slope, so I don't know what was Danny thinking then in that moment when he realised that this wasn't Joey's doing. I don't think his next thought would have been, oh, well, Stephanie must have done it. But nevertheless, we don't have too long to find out what he's thinking, because Jessie then comes in with Stephanie and she admits what happened. And Joey immediately blames himself for leaving the cars in the ignition. And that is a good lesson. Don't leave your car keys in the ignition, not just because an 8-year-old might clamber into it, but also because that's going to make it very easy for somebody to steal your car. And Stephanie says to Joey, no, it's not your fault. And I like the fact that both were taking responsibility. Obviously, ultimately, it's more Stephanie's fault, but the fact that both were owning up to the part they played in this, I thought was a really good idea and something that was very good to see. And then it gets really emotional, and the final scene is very emotional, and Stephanie is so hard on herself, and she thinks she can't get anything right, and while Danny makes it clear that he's still very upset about what has happened, he also makes it very, very clear, and he says, and I quote, "I am always going to forgive you because I love you." And I got so emotional at that. And obviously, Stephanie is not going to just instantly change her opinion of herself and start thinking, oh, well, it's fine. But we can see that Danny's words have helped her to deal with the situation, because screaming and shouting at her isn't going to solve anything, especially when she's feeling guilty. She's accepted responsibility, and Danny helped her to realise that, yes, it was a bad thing to do, but no, it's not the absolute end of the world that means you should run away from home. And I think it was a beautifully executed scene, very well written, really great performances from both Bob Saget and Jodie Sweetin. Definitely a very, very moving way to end the episode. This is a really memorable episode. It might not have the most variety in it, and I do feel like the ones that have the most variety tend to be the most fascinating. But even with that in mind, what happens in this is so powerful and so memorable and completely unpredictable. I would be willing to bet that nobody could have guessed what was going to happen with that car. Maybe somebody did, I don't know. But personally, I don't think it's something I would have seen coming the first time round. And obviously that unpredictability is really, really effective. And we have so many emotions in this and so many wonderful performances. I'm nothing but impressed. I feel like Honey, I Broke the House definitely deserves to be quite high up there on IMDb, and I kind of agree with that rating. It's definitely a pretty solid episode.